They spit in our faces and call it rain. Well, that's an expression that many people use in slightly different and sometimes more offensive terms, but the gist is usually the same. Hubristic egomaniacs engage in attacks on you, and they tell you they're helping you, that it's for your own good. Let's see how that phrase applies to Joe Biden's powwow with striking union auto workers in Detroit. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC TV, and here's the dangerous position in which the central government central planners have placed us and the automotive market. After the Biden administration EPA last year issued its edict that by 2026, all domestic vehicle sellers will have to see their lines average 33% more than 2021 gas mileage levels, pushing the MPG to 49, it became clearer that Biden and his ilk eagerly were engaging in some kind of maliciousness. The EPA's longer-term goal would see CAFE standards and emissions mandates so strict that by 2032, 2/3 of all cars would be electric, meaning that the carbon emissions would actually come from things like coal plants and unreliable wind farms, the latter of which many politicians seem eager to insulate from criticism over their own environmental dangers and the requirement for massive amounts of carbon emissions to build the stupid things. And then, well, we found out that in 2035, the final goal of the Biden administration is to eliminate nearly all internal combustion engines per Joe Biden's executive order. All of it done not by the political class leaving government to offer you their magical electric options in the free market, not by seeing them peacefully compete to produce and see if they can do better than internal combustion car makers do. No. Not at all. This is being done via fiat, by edict, by command. And of course, for your own good, they'll tell us, as we feel the rain in our faces. This not only is a typically insidious, injurious line of political aggression against consumers, it's an overt attack on automakers and the auto workers' unions with whom Biden and his leftist cronies typically try to curry favor. So one wonders what the members of the United Auto Workers UAW union will do on the whole now that strong-armed Joe joined their picket line Tuesday in crumbling Detroit. He already has ordered a hefty $12 billion to be showered on the auto plants that his diktats will force to shift into EV manufacturing, heedless of the fact that his mandates are just the kind of central planning that Stalin tried with the Ukrainian kulaks and their farms, that Mao tried more than once, resulting in mass starvation, that the Japanese tried with microchip manufacturing in the 1980s, causing massive devastation to their economy. Christian Daddick reports for the Washington Examiner that Biden wasn't just going to be speaking at the UAW. He, of course, would prance and pose and march with the UAW picketers along their picket line to support the UAW strike against the already dying automakers whom Biden wants to hurt even more with his mandates, even as he also puts a $12 billion Band-Aid, thanks to us, on the cancer. Quote, Tuesday, I'll go to Michigan to join the picket line and stand in solidarity with the men and women of UAW as they fight for a fair share of the value they helped create, Biden tweeted Friday evening. It's time for a win-win agreement that keeps American auto manufacturing thriving with well-paid UAW jobs. Ah, yes, the fair share rhetoric. Biden and his leftist pals love to use that as they tell you what your fair share of taxation is, what they will take from you as they define right and wrong and fair and unfair for you, whether you accept it or not. Now, Biden's cozying up to the very auto workers whom he and his EPA will put out of business. As auto expert Eric Peters explains, the Bidenista push for EVs will see an artificial change in their manufacturing that will, simply put, kill jobs that normally would be supported in the regular consumer-driven productive economy. Peters already has reported on the lack of consumer interest in electric vehicles, and now he writes on the strike and the UAW future, saying, quote, "The big three automakers are losing billions in pursuit of that chimera on electrification. But the old grifter behind the teleprompter says they ought to share their record profits with the workers." The etymology of coercion is fascinating. When a government official says share, he means hand over. This perversion of language also can be seen in the perverse manner by which politicians like Biden try to tell you that their commands and prohibitions and redirections of usable capital are for your good and will save you money, rather than actually allowing you to decide how you will save money with your market choices. Eric Peters notes, quote, "Ford CEO Jim Farley recently corrected his previous estimates of the losses incurred by electrification from $3 billion to $4.5 billion. And when it comes to the manufacture of these less popular, government-pushed, central planned rigs," Peters notes, quote, "The prospect of being out of work increases as electrification waxes because there isn't going to be much work left to do. An electric vehicle is simpler to assemble than a vehicle with an engine and transmission and related peripherals. It is basically an extruded plastic shell draped over a skate that holds the battery and motor. Fewer workers are needed to put the two together." So a few UAW strikers might ask Biden why he adopts the pretense of backing them in their so-called struggle for their fair share of profits when his own edicts are stripping the automakers of profits and pushing them towards insolvency. A few UAW strikers might want to ask him why he sprinkles our tax cash in a $12 billion handout from one hand while punching them with the other hand. The situation is utterly perverse, and it reminds those who believe in liberty that one cannot fall into the trap of seeing the union members as innocent victims either. As Karen DeCoster, CPA, observed for the Mises Institute in 2007, Americans have been force-fed a multi-decades-long diet of nonsense when it comes to the purported beneficence of politically favored trade unions. Quote, "One of my favorite lines from people is the one that goes, 'Well, nowadays unions are awful, but the early intentions were good.' The early intentions of unions were the same as the modern goals: to be a social democratic, ideological, and political force by aligning class interests with the political elites who hold the power, and using that alliance to minimize the role of the free market and its impact on the lives of individuals by replacing market forces with an interventionist social engineering order that will be directed by elites from government, labor, and the corporatocracy." And in 2009, economist and Mises Institute adjunct scholar Morgan O. Reynolds provided a detailed analysis of how collectivist political forces going back to the late 19th century have been levered to hand labor unions power over employers and non-labor employees. But of course, double talk dominates when Biden burns that evil carbon to get to Detroit. And we can expect the climate insanity to get even more intense from here on, as Biden just signed an anti-constitutional executive order to create a youth-based climate corps that will get our cash from taxes to engage in climate activism. Oh, joy of joys. Perhaps now we can convince more folks that the collectivists on all fronts are not helpful, that indeed they engage in the political equivalent of spitting in our faces and calling it rain. And perhaps we can get a few of those union members to agree. Perhaps. Thanks for watching, one and all. Please like and subscribe, especially on Rumble, where they don't censor us. Thank you again, Rumble. And please make sure that if you are watching on YouTube, you're still subscribed. You can also find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Parler, and on TikTok. And if you are so inclined, please head on over to MRCTV.org. MRCTV.org is a place where you can find the whole team, and of course you can visit the MRC Store and donate to the Media Research Center. You can find me on Gab at Gardner Goldsmith, and I'm also on Twitter at Gard Goldsmith. For MRC TV, thanks for watching, one and all. I'm Gardner Goldsmith.